The French court has ruled that the leader of the National Rally, Marine Le Pen, has been stripped of her ability to stand for election. This means that she will not be able to run in the 2027 presidential elections. I've said before that this is a trial made by politicians for politicians, or even for politics. And Marine Le Pen is not wrong. Her party is the undisputed leader in the polls. She poses a real threat to the incumbent president, Emmanuel Macron, who has very low approval ratings. It is unprecedented in Europe after 1945 for the leader of the biggest opposition party, who is leading in the polls, to be excluded by court order, even though she gets a better result every election. The sentence prohibits her from running for public office for the next 5 years. This is a decision of the court of first instance, so normally there would be a right to appeal the court's decision. The problem is that, just a few days ago, the Constitutional Council of France changed the law on this issue. The sentence is already in force. It is possible that she will appeal the verdict and be acquitted in the second instance. But in the meantime, the election will take place. So she will not be able to run in the election. This situation was made possible by the ruling of the Constitutional Council, which, on Friday, 3 days before the verdict, decided that the president of this constitutional court, who is also a politician from Macron's party, could already exclude her from the elections. Is this the all-new European model of democracy? All indications are that the so-called European elites do not want right-wing parties to come to power. This is confirmed by the example of Romania, where first, the victory of the right-wing Călin Georgescu in the first round of the presidential elections was annulled, and at the beginning of March, the Central Electoral Commission annulled his candidacy in the repeated presidential elections scheduled for May. What is happening in Romania is just the first episode in which the unelected elites in Brussels are trying to take all power in 27 European countries. We were a testing ground for them, and they will try to do it again. George Simeon, the current frontrunner in the presidential election in Romania, said something similar could happen in Poland in May's presidential election. We are facing the same threats to democracy, because when Karol Nawrocki makes it to the second round and wins the presidential election, they will do the same as in Romania. They don't want the Trump MAGA wave to come to Europe. The EU elites have their own candidate in the Polish presidential race, Rafał Trzaskowski, who fits their vision of a Polish foreign policy submissive towards Brussels and Berlin. If the EU elites candidate wins, then all procedures will have been followed. But if someone else wins, they'll find some reason to not recognize the result. These are the so-called European values that the commissioners in Brussels so often invoke. The European model of democracy is when a candidate who subscribes to a left-wing worldview wins. Preparations for a possible annulment of the election in Poland are already taking place. A special team is working at the Internal Security Agency to investigate the reasons for the annulment of the presidential elections in Romania. This may mean that work is already underway on various scenarios that could result in the annulment of the presidential elections in Poland. The ruling coalition wanted the 3 joint chambers of the Supreme Court to decide on the validity of the elections. However, President Andrzej Duda vetoed the law that was supposed to make this possible. Why does the ruling party want to change the law if the election is to be recognized by the Chamber of Extraordinary Control in Public Affairs of the Supreme Court? To maintain democracy as they understand it. This, of course, refers to the European model of democracy. We are in a state of fighting democracy. The Brussels elite do not want a candidate from outside their circle to win in Poland. That is why the European Commission is already preparing a round table on the Polish presidential elections. The European Commission is in contact with Poland regarding the organization of a round table before the presidential elections. This could mean open interference in Poland's internal affairs and influence the campaign and elections, which are the exclusive competence of Poland, as enshrined in the Constitution. In the face of their friends in the USA's Democratic Party losing power in America, the EU elites have chosen to double down on authoritarian measures. Should they successfully install their candidates, free elections in Europe may become a thing of the past. This means that future elections are of crucial importance, and the best way to protect them is mass voter turnout.
Bucha, near Kiev, will forever remain one of the symbols of the bestiality of the Russian army. It was here, shortly after the invasion began, that the most abhorrent war crimes took place. Last weekend, its residents celebrated the 3rd anniversary of the liberation of the village. Unsurprisingly, those who experienced Russian aggression and occupation feel disappointed by the prolonged negotiations to bring peace to Ukraine. We gave everything we had, and now we still have to give back the minerals, sign the oil and gas contract. Well, there are different discussions at that level, and I really don't like it. We stop this scourge, this fascism, at the expense of the lives of those who are buried here and those who now hold the front line. The Americans have a different perspective. Donald Trump announced during his campaign that he would put the interests of his countrymen first. He has told the media that he is not satisfied with the progress on the agreement on the use of the rare earth elements located on Ukrainian territory.
I see he's trying to back out of the rare earth deal. And if he does that, he's got some problems, big problems. We made a deal on rare earth.
The problem, according to President Vladimir Zelensky, is that the document presented to him for signature differs from what negotiators had previously agreed. We cannot accept anything that undermines Ukraine's integration into the European Union. Kyiv has many doubts. It is a completely different document. There are many things that have not been discussed, and some that the parties have already rejected. I don't want to cause a wave of protests. I'm very eager to get a concrete opinion from lawyers at the highest level. Kyiv expects Washington to clarify the rules of the investment fund and concrete security guarantees. The issue at the moment is something paramount, that is, security guarantees. This is what President Zelensky is talking about, and frankly, the only conceivable security guarantor could be NATO. At this stage, Donald Trump rules out this possibility. According to the United States, the mere establishment of lucrative economic cooperation is a guarantee in and of itself.
He wants to be a member of NATO. Well, he was never going to be a member of NATO. He understands that. So if he's looking to renegotiate the deal, he's got big problems. Go ahead.
It seems another series of negotiations between Kyiv and Washington is ahead of us. What is certain, however, is that from the signing of the agreement to the actual extraction of minerals will be a long time. There is still a long way to go. Of course, American business won't come in while there are hostilities going on. There's no ceasefire. And we know that most of these minerals are located in the east of Ukraine, where the fighting is continuing. That's why the United States is engaging in peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. President Donald Trump criticized statements by Vladimir Putin in which he questioned the legitimacy of Vladimir Zelensky. He warned that additional sanctions could be imposed on Russia if it further torpedoes efforts to achieve a ceasefire.
The United States has redeployed B-2 bombers in the Middle East, sending a clear signal to the United States' main adversaries. The White House is not bluffing. It's about the ultimatum that President Donald Trump delivered to Iran, demanding the resumption of talks on the nuclear deal. This is supposed to curb Tehran's nuclear ambitions, so much so that the Iranians don't want to hear about direct negotiations with the Americans. Direct negotiations with the United States have been rejected, but indirect negotiations remain. Iran has always been committed to indirect negotiations, and now the Supreme Leader has also stressed that indirect negotiations can continue. Indirect, meaning negotiations using third, relatively neutral countries. The Americans refuse.
We're going to make a decision on secondary tariffs on Iran based on whether or not they're going to make a deal. If they're going to make a deal, then we're never going to put secondary tariffs on. We're going to hope they have a great, long, and successful life as a country. But we'll see what happens. It's very interesting. I can't imagine them doing anything else but making a deal. I would prefer a deal to the other alternative, which I think everybody in this plane knows what that is. And that's not going to be pretty, and I do not prefer that.
Trump stated in an interview that there are two options: either negotiations or sites where Iran is working on building a nuclear bomb get bombed. This unequivocal warning sparked fury in Tehran. Hostility from the US and Israel has always been present. They are threatening to attack us, which we think is unlikely. But if they commit any wrong, they will certainly receive a strong retaliatory blow. According to British intelligence, one potential target outside Israel could be a US military base in the Indian Ocean, the very one where B-2 bombers are stationed today, and which was one of the key logistical points for the US military during the Gulf Wars.
B-2 stealth bombers are now in Diego Garcia, which is an island chain in the Indian Ocean from which America could launch more devastating attacks on the Houthis. B-2s have been used under the Biden administration in the past. They can carry these very, very heavy bombs that can dig into mountains and underground tunnel systems.
In recent weeks, Iran has announced the opening of another underground missile base, which Tehran says is expected to be the largest such installation in history. There, ballistic missiles, able to hit targets hundreds of kilometers away, are to be stored.
Krakow, Wrocław, Mysłowica, or recently Gdansk. In many Polish cities, Muslims celebrated the end of Ramadan with ceremonies in honor of Allah. The celebrations are not surprising, as there has been a small Muslim community in Poland for many years. What is surprising is a sudden increase in their numbers. The mosque in Gdansk has existed for about 40 years, and these Ramadan gatherings have taken place before, but on a much smaller scale. I think what really shocked the residents was the size of this gathering, so big that a whole street had to be closed so that everyone could attend. This raises the question of whether this is linked to the introduction of the European Union's Migration Pact, and whether it will end up changing Poland's demographics. Polish border guards have adopted a passive stance on the border with Germany, allowing the authorities in Berlin to drop unwanted migrants on the Polish side, who are increasingly being sighted on the streets of Polish cities. These are not students, these are not workers, many have just arrived. They have backpacks, they are not properly dressed, they are walking around in slippers. You can see that these people have been travelling and are somehow lost here. They can be seen standing in front of shops, shopping, gathering in parks. There have been numerous such sightings. The government, as well as the local government officials associated with the currently ruling Civic Coalition, want to sweep the matter under the carpet. Earlier, Prime Minister Donald Tusk annulled the referendum on, among other things, mass immigration. Now, in the context of the upcoming presidential elections, Civic Coalition politicians are trying to censor or otherwise silence any questions about these newfound foreign visitors. In a city where the Second World War started 85 years ago, triggered by racist ideology, we can't allow ourselves to make racist remarks and comments. I'm not afraid of people who have a different skin colour. I'm afraid of people who have these racist views. The current Polish authorities don't want the public to notice the pushbacks that are occurring on the Polish-German border. As the journalist Aleksandra Fedorska revealed in 2024, Germany has used this method to funnel about 9,000 migrants to Poland. In 2023, under the Law and Justice government, there were 24 such people. We don't want migrants. We all know we accept 50, they will immediately send 200. I am terribly afraid. I have already had to deal with them because I worked in Germany. I remember how the police behaved. When migrants were causing trouble, they didn't ID them, but they did ID us. During a council meeting, opposition politicians represented the opinion of a huge part of Radom's residents by opposing the EU Migration Pact, but this motion was rejected by the coalition governing the city. They are using legal tricks to scrap the Law and Justice Party's position, which very clearly states that there is no place for illegal immigration in Poland. They don't have enough courage to look you in the eye and say that they agree to accepting illegal immigrants. And at the level of the national government, they do exactly the same thing. They secretly accept the Migration Pact. Then they agree to have Germany introduce border controls, which function as a pretext to funnel migrants into our country. The current Polish government, led by the Civic Coalition and Prime Minister Donald Tusk, appears to be running their migration policy using a template seen in many other countries. Publicly to denounce the so-called illegal immigration, while simultaneously blocking any practical steps to curbing mass immigration, adopting a passive attitude as migrants flood in. The current migration policies of Germany, the United Kingdom, and to some extent the immigration policy of America under the Biden administration appear to follow a simpler template. Crucially, this model of migration policy has yet to fix the problem of mass immigration in any country that has implemented it.